By having you say your complete name?
Weldon A Chase. Want its serial number?
Yeah.
3130-6362. I find that amusing that of all the things I've forgotten that I can, after 58 years, come up with that.
How about your unit?
L Company 85th.
And highest rank?
Staff Sergeant.
And the dates that you served with the 10th Mountain Division?
From April 43 till the end of the war in 45.
Now, but you had the distinguished accomplishment of being injured 3 times.
Well, yeah. The first time was came a result of an accident, I think, that I was injured on a patrol, but I had somehow or other fallen and scraped my head, which became infected and needed some attention. So that was kind of like number one. But the next one was on Belvedere, and I got back in time to play around on 9/13, and I got some shrapnel there from obviously a tree burst. We were in an orchard at the time, so that was kind of interesting. There were 3 of us more or less together, and I don't think I was on top, but when we ended up in a heap below this tree, the fellow on the bottom should have been protected, but he took the worst whack. He got hit in the foot and got a very severe wound. We had to cut his boot off and so forth. I was in the middle and got it in the back of my shoulder, and one of my buddies was on top, and he thought he had the $1 million wound, but it wasn't quite that severe, so he had to go back to work.
Describe what a $1 million wound is.
He got hit in the fanny, and he thought he was more severely injured than he was, but medics patched him up, and it was just a scrape. So, but you can take quite a bit in the rump and not have it stop you completely. But so he, as I say, he thought he had the $1 million wound.
Can you get that mic in a little bit?
Okay. How's that?
Yep.
Why don't you go back to the night of Belvedere and talk a little bit about what you remember about jumping off?
Well, we jumped off, of course. It was very late, and we all moved up more or less in a row because we were undetected at that point, so it was safe enough to be in groups and together. Perhaps one of the things I remember most is that we were funneled into an opening in a wall. There was a wall of some sort, either a banking or a stone wall, and we were funneled to an opening in it so that we could continue on up rather than everybody climbing over this wall. And there was a tripwire in this opening, which was very common. Funnel them down and then put a mine in there or a booby trap. And in my group, there were almost 200. And every one of us stepped over that wire and turned to the buddy behind us and watch the wire. Now this is in the middle of the night. And as I say, it must have been 200 men step over that wire because it was not detonated. I did not hear it. But that went on, and we went on up, and we began to, later in the evening, almost morning I suppose, we were detected as advancing. And as I recall, at least in our regiment, we were not to be armed. We didn't have our weapons armed. We were told to use bayonets and grenades because that way we would not give away our own position. But if you did, for any reason, come face to face with somebody and had to fire, you were to give a password. And I think I seem to remember, but don't hold me to this, that our password was Yahoo. So it was a kind of a strange deal. You'd hear somebody came face to face with somebody, and you'd hear this Yahoo, and then bang, and somebody discharged their weapon. And we continued on up, and we began to get some fire, some shelling. Obviously, I would say probably mortars rather than artillery, but I was in against a bank and probably on a road, what I thought was fairly safe. But the way the shell came in and exploded, I was obviously above it and got hit in the thigh, in the leg above my knee. And it was not particularly painful. It was a good thump, but it was not particularly painful. But as you might imagine, getting stabbed with a screwdriver twice in that muscle above your knee, it began to stiffen up. And in a relatively short time, I was not mobile, to say the least. So a medic that was assigned to us, who was a good friend of mine, Neil Dearborn, came over and used my first aid pack and wrapped it around my leg and stopped the bleeding and so forth. But by this time I was kind of lame, so Neil grabbed my other leg and told me to pick my bad one up, and he kind of dragged me down the hill a little bit till we could get to a point where it was safe to stand, and the two of us to stand and lean on him, and he took me back to a medic station, which I have recently, in the last few days, had it pointed out to me by another man that was in 3rd Battalion, 85th. It was on that same mission, and had a much better memory than I did, and he swears that was the medic station. It was a building on the side of the road, and that figures. And we were taken into the basement. I remember now, it was probably, I thought it had been bombed out, and it probably had been. Probably the top had been severely destroyed from shelling. So we were, yeah, in virtually a cellar hole. We had a Father Gordon, was a priest in our unit. Well, he was near us at that time. And he was around trying to be solicitous of all the fellows that were injured and so forth. And he had a Bible in one hand and a bottle of scotch in the other. And he offered me a drink, and I did not drink at that time, and he kind of looked at me with the name of Chase and said, "Well, you won't take my drink, and you probably don't need my religion, but I think I better get on and start taking care of some of my own boys." So he drifted off, but I then was left there for a while, I'm sure, because there were a lot going on at the time. And pretty soon, a couple of fellows came along. Probably a couple of prisoners of war, POWs, probably came and picked up my litter and put me up on the top of the bows on a Jeep. They used to put extra bows on the top of the Jeep so that you could put 2 stretchers underneath and then 2 on top. And that way they were able to carry 4 people. And that was a little bit of a thrill, going down off those mountains, laying on your strap to a litter on the top of the, 4 feet above the base of the Jeep and the bed of the Jeep, and rolling around. And to say that those were roads was a little bit of a stretch, but that was fun. And they took me back. I don't remember much. Not that I don't remember much, but I cannot remember where we went from there. But I did end up in a hospital in Naples for a few weeks, and they took awfully good care of me, and got me in shape enough to go back probably, I'd say 5 to 6 weeks later or something, because I was able to get back in time to start the next campaign, which was on 9/13 and the rest of the ridge up there. So,
is there anything else that you want to tell us, a memorable event related to?
I have never been blessed with a great memory, and it's fortunate. Actually, it's kind of a blessing. The wounds that I received were not all that severe that they put me out of commission, or that I use a cane or limp or anything. And consequently, I was spared an awful lot of the grief that those fellows that hung in there day to day, day after day, had to go through. So I really consider myself more or less fortunate. I missed, it's one of those things you don't want to miss, but you sure don't want to do again either. So no, it's a case of, the next time that I get hurt was in an orchard somewhere, as I said, with the 2 or 3 of us piling up on top of each other. And there again, it was a scrape across the back, which they took care of very nicely. And I had a couple of weeks in Montecatini with clean bed and coffee and sweet rolls for 10 o'clock and then back for treatment and so forth. So I got back out of that in time to catch up with the guys up here near the lake. I drove across the Po with I don't know, some sort of transportation, either a Jeep or something, and caught up with my unit. One of the interesting things and one of the good things, and gives us, so many of us, memories, is that if you were injured or for any reason taken offline with the 10th, apparently the Army felt that the training that we received was sufficiently specialized that we should be returned to the same unit. So that when I was sent to hospital and then came back, I came right back to the same unit. I was back to being section sergeant again. They promoted a few people in the meantime. While I was gone, they made other sergeants of us, so that by the time I got through, I had all buck sergeants working for me. So it was a good unit, but we all stayed together, same fellas. As I came back and found that some had been wounded and replaced by Repo Depot people, but yeah, it was as an experience in the Army, I'd have to say it was very, very good and just perfect for my temperament and so forth, to have spent the two years in Colorado. And I have good buddies at home that were dog-faced soldiers, and some of them, one of them was in the Battle of the Bulge, and the other one came in at Sicily and worked his way all the way up the boot of Italy. And their experience and their connections with their outfit are nothing compared to the way the fellows in the 10th have hung together. But I think that's probably a case of the ones that are still skiing, still able to ski and so forth, have a very strong fraternity and kind of have carried the association, I think, at least in New England, where I come from. Perhaps in the Midwest or Southwest, that's not the case, but it has been a very strong group, no question about it, to be 58 years later still as tight a group as it is.
Are you still skiing?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah. We had a good winter in New England. It was I don't know, we had something like 10 feet of snow, total accumulation, but I was able to ski 15 to 20 days. And even at that, in Connecticut, where we don't have any big mountains, one of the fellows I ski with each week, or a couple of days a week, is another old trooper. So we do have a good time with that. So.